plans. Right now, there are more than 2.5 million confirmed coronavirus cases in the United States, with the death toll nearing 126,000 lives lost.
So when you combine accessibility and affordability, those things are an issue. Those things impact communities that look like mine even more. When unemployment rate is one thing in certain
Tower, eventually stopping at Gracie Mansions.
Why do I have to worry about my family? Education, you can say that was access to the internet. And now we're seeing that firsthand when it comes to delivery and our healthcare system. And so the exposure and the broadness in the system.
This is the truth about the cops and what they don't want you to see or know. They don't want you to see how completely peaceful most of these protests are and how many people are shot. Remember how I said despite the precautions?
Oh my gosh. Woof. There's so much to say. Like, getting through that semester was definitely one of the most hardest things ever. Not only because we're learning online and like we're all stuck at home, there was nothing differentiating between school time and home relaxation time. Like, it was all messed up. I couldn't relax anymore. I was always on the edge and also frantic and frustrated.
Yeah, the pandemic really changed how my finals went down in terms of the resources I had, what I was able to create, and how satisfied I was with the work that I had made. All of that went down significantly. I had to change where I was staying as well, because I live with my grandmother in Queens during the school year, but because she's more susceptible to COVID, I had to move out so that I wouldn't get her sick.
I've started taking life more seriously, I feel like, and my ambitions, and I'm like, oh, I've been sitting here, maybe I can finally learn how to do more filmmaking, or do photography, and do more multimodal art and poetry, so I've been doing that kind of thing.
COVID has definitely made me really sit down and really consider what I'm gonna do with my life. I just hope that the economy will be okay and the job market will be okay once I graduate, because I worry about that a lot.
COVID-19 kind of forces people to deal with a lot of issues that they've been having with themselves, that they've been ignoring because of life and responsibilities, because it forces you to be in one place. When you're moving around, you get to kind of run away from your problems. And what has happened is now everyone has to face them head on. So with me personally, I feel like I have a lot of communication issues and baggage from the past and the life I lived and the recent events that have been happening the past 2 years. And it's kind of now I'm trying to deal with it.
So I actually back in April did have COVID. Me and all my family members in my house had it. Luckily, we were fine, and we all tested for antibodies and we're all positive for antibodies. So it was definitely just a fucking crazy experience. But again, yeah, I feel very lucky that we were able to make it through. Didn't need to go to a hospital. Didn't have to just seeing what other people are going through. I feel very blessed.
I'm definitely very exhausted, as a Black person, seeing Black death trending.
My community is mainly Hispanics and Blacks, so it definitely changed the weather in the air for everyone in my community. And we have a precinct, a police precinct, 4 blocks away from where I live. And I think seeing cops in my area double was even more scarier for everyone in my neighborhood. COVID already turned everyone's world upside down. I think this addition of racial tension just added it even more.
My family, a lot of them had a hard time accepting that the world in general was starting to blame the pandemic on Asians at the beginning of the pandemic. When Black Lives Matter started coming into the news, then they shifted the blame towards Black people. And honestly, that really hurt my heart a lot more than the beginning of the pandemic. As POCs, I feel like we should support each other. We're all just people. Yeah, we lead different lives. We all have different struggles. We all should acknowledge our own privileges. We should all be allies whenever we can be. To see other POCs kind of fighting against each other just defeats the whole purpose.
When quarantine happened, I thought I would be much more productive. And I think there's this expectation on creatives to, it's like, oh yeah, it's like, now you have all the time in the world to like work on your creative projects, whether it's like an album, collection, paintings, whatever have you. And it's actually no, because like now you're dealing with like the debilitating stress of like just surviving in the world. But I was able to like get into more of a creative flow like a month into it, and I have been like working on a lot of stuff right now. I created I have a new album actually I made in this time, which is cool, and it's like I made it sort of like as a response to like just the feeling like of this period. The album's called it's called Spiraling, because like I think that's what literally everyone has been doing in quarantine.
I wanted to be the gateway to some kind of opportunity for everyone in my major, no matter what it is. I created a website for the graduating class because we didn't have one. While making that, I hoped that at least some people got job offers or connections out of it. But when we do our own things, it ends up being so much more worth it than if we just went with whatever traditional route that was set up for us.
I've been getting a lot of attention from my work, and it kind of feels like white guilt, like a bunch of white guilt. I guess like a natural reaction to the things that people have been seeing going on, because it's like all those racial injustices, all these kind of bad things are happening. What is the thing I could do to support? The least I could do is support a Black artist.
Like recently, since the protest, I've been getting a lot of like followers on Instagram, and people are starting to see me, and it's weird because I've always been here, you know. I've always been here, and people are now choosing to see me and it's like things have to boil down to this point for me to be seen, or for me to be cared about, or for my art to be considered, and it's kind of irritating and overwhelming. And I feel like as a Black artist, people kind of always expect me to say something, even though I've been through so much and having to see so much. Is like I have to always say something, you know. It's just very, very exhausting. Exhausting is the word for it.
Yeah. Because like I went to art school, and like the biggest thing in art high school is you submit to Scholastic Art and Writing, you submit to Young Arts, you submit to all these competitions, and then like those competitions favor like racial work. I won 2 national medals in Scholastic after submitting like 26 things, and they were all about race. It makes you think, is this what I need to succeed in this industry? And like I remember I sent a submission of like 4 poems, and only one of them was about being Iranian to like a lit mag, and they were like, oh, these were so exotic, when the other 3 were like about flowers and stuff like that. So it's like, are you only noticing me for my like ethnicity?
I feel like a lot of programs, they're like, oh, hi, you're a person of color, tell us your struggles. Like, why is that the first thing you want to hear about me, is my struggles? Like, it's so frustrating. I'm much more than that.
I've even like been emailed to do commissions of like Black trauma. Like people are commissioning or like emailing me like, hey, I found you on Instagram and I wanted you to make this protest riot drawing of a black woman getting attacked, and I was like, what the hell? Like, it's like you're making, you wanted me to draw all this? Like, this is kind of crazy. And it's like my mind is still like trying to gather what's going on, and my heart is still really heavy, you know?
I feel that I have an obligation to at least have some art that is political, but I also feel that not everyone should be held up to that. I've realized recently that a lot of, especially like the black art that I see, is based in like trauma. A lot of the movies that I've seen, I feel bad because when I watch some of these movies, I feel like I don't want to watch it because it's based in trauma, and that I don't get to see like the happiness that could be produced from this culture, if that makes sense. Like, people of color, and especially black people, should be allowed to make like happy media and art based off of their culture, instead of it always being expected to be based in trauma. Like, it should be allowed to be happy. Which is like it's really weird that that's not the norm, now that I'm thinking about it.
What people are failing to realize is, as a person of color, to create art that is reflecting just your own feelings is inherently political, because our experiences as people of color and our feelings are inherently politicized no matter what we do. I think the big issue is that why are we always the ones who are held responsible? Why are artists of color always the ones who feel responsible for it? Like why isn't Taylor Swift like dropping a song like talking about systemic oppression? Honestly, not saying that it would be good. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, like, why are we always the ones who have to like speak about our fucking like struggle all the fucking time? Like, it feels so much like these white artists are always on the sidelines, cheerleading, when it's like, why aren't you subbing into the game?
I feel that Instagram has been a big help. In general, I get most of my information from there about protests that are happening, events that are happening, petitions to sign, causes to join and stuff like that. Or just people that I should be following now because they have the same mindset as I do.
And now, because the COVID-19 is like it's in everyone's face, you can't run from it. It's necessary. I would call it like necessary venom, because like we need to see these issues for what it is. A lot of people who didn't know what was going on now have to. You kind of have to see it because it's right there. You can't go out with your friends, really. You can't go work to distance yourself from these issues. It's right in front of you. So it's like, all right, now this issue is right in front of me. What are ways that I can help?
And I know like these become trending topics on social media for a while, and then they pass by for some people, but like for me it's always there. I always see it. It's not just a hashtag for me, you know. It's like everyday life. It's surviving.
I think it's very performative, because if you look at like all these fashion companies and stuff, are they using Bangladeshi workers that they don't pay? Are they using Uyghur Muslim slave labor in concentration camps, which most major companies were found to be using? Like, if you say you care about social progress, you would be more ethical, I would think. And like, you could, like, your editor-in-chief can resign and stuff like that, and you could put in a black person or, like, someone else, but, like, that's just one change. That doesn't mean you're gonna change your ways. Like, you can hope that person will do something, but, like, it's the stakeholders who might hold all the power, and then nothing actually happens. It's just like, look, we made a black person our head. But if they're powerless, what can you do?
All right, let me start with the companies. That is complete garbage. All those statements is completely garbage. They didn't make those statements because it was morally right. Because if it was what they really believed, they would have made it a long time ago. They made those statements because it became a trend. They feel like we're going to lose money if we don't say anything. That's why they made those statements.
I feel like one of the things that like companies could do would be, I guess, like promote and like support like Black businesses and stuff, instead of like trying to like say that they're very like woke or whatever and like very like supportive of like the initiative and just trying to sell people more stuff. I feel like if they could like take a step back and like suggest like other companies that are Black owned and whatnot, I feel like that could help.
The way people use like diversity has become like such bullshit. The fight has to stop being for diversity. It has to be for plurality, like having a plurality of different people of color, not just having like a few minorities here sprinkled here and there. Why is it that the sort of lower tiers is where I see all the brown faces? Why when I move up do I not see any of us? Like, is it that you like, are we only able to go so high? Like, it's like we kind of have this glass ceiling put on us that it's like, this is the highest where you go, but if you go higher than that, then you become a problem. And there shouldn't only be accountability taken when some bad shit happens. Like, my issue with these performative companies, performative acts by schools, is that you're only doing it when the shit hits the fan. It's like, why does this have to even happen in the first place? Like, if you already were having these conversations, connecting these variables, and creating, like, this community already, you would never run into these issues.
And then performative activism on social media. TikTok, they turned these people who suffered at the hands of racial injustice into a hashtag, in the worst way possible, into an event. And what they, especially Black women and Black trans women, from what I've seen, these people don't, again, like I said before, you see struggle as some kind of spectacle. You see it as some kind of event, something for you to get your little clicks off. So they're gonna make these disrespectful, insidious, disgusting like dance videos and songs about a Black woman who got murdered in her sleep, just for likes on TikTok, just for likes on Instagram, just for likes on wherever. Because after they get their likes, like I guarantee you right now, those people who made those posts, they're not talking about these issues. They did it all for likes. And these white people, a lot of them is white people doing it in the most disrespectful ways. They turned her into a meme, Breonna Taylor, basically. They took her life and how she lived, and they just ran it to the ground. They basically put her on the same level as a SpongeBob reaction picture, just for some likes.
It's irritating because you see it all the time. Like, I remember there was Blackout Tuesday. I know a lot of people sincerely meant well, but a lot of people were kind of just uploading it because I guess they saw other people do it, and I don't think a lot of people understood the impact or what Black Tuesday actually was supposed to be. Because I know there were like a lot of like white people uploading Black Tuesday onto Instagram, and then 2 weeks later they were holding a Trump 2020 sign. Like, that's not activism. It's like, I want to see more than just a Black screen, or following a Black artist on Instagram, or tagging a bunch of people in a Black Lives Matter post. I want to see more than that. I want to see like action. I want to see protesting. I want to see, even if you don't go out physically to protest, there's ways for you to do more at home, sign petitions, share petitions. Like, there's so much to do, and it's so like irritating when people are doing performative activism, because it's like, you really have privilege to just sit around and just turn on your phone and upload a Black screen and close your phone, and that's it, and not have to have a worry on your mind.
Going back to film, I think Black Lives Matter opened up the conversation. Let's hire more Black filmmakers and people of color on set. Let's have diversity. So that was really nice, because I think people finally were able to talk about it. Yeah, I'm just glad that like everything is just like in your face, as it should be. Like, this should be in everyone's faces, not just if you're Black. Like, everyone should be like, ready to talk about it.
My work style during COVID regarding Black Lives Matter has shifted more into coming up with materials that I can show to my parents personally, translating news articles, writing letters, even creating a whole collection of information for my family to read and discuss about Black Lives Matter. For me, it's important that the people that I'm constantly surrounding myself with at least understand what's going on in the world, and that they're at least seeing both sides of the situation.
At least for me in my household, it's more so like everything is centered around like Black voices, that like they forget that like trans Black people exist, like gay Black people exist. It's more so like trying to make the conversation more intersectional. Personally, for me, like this is like such like a minor step, but like I started watching RuPaul's Drag Race with my mom. She really likes it. I think it's made her like open her eyes to like realize that like we can like talk about like, you know, racism against like Black people, but like at the same time, like that's not the only group that needs like help.
Only thing you can do is really educate yourself properly on these issues, and don't look to other Black and brown people to explain it for you. If you want to get educated, you can, and it's fine with asking questions, like about like, you know, like microaggressions and things of that sort. But like generally, if you want to get educated, you have to put the first foot in, you know, and like have more empathy for people, because you could get educated all you want, but you can't. I could tell you everything, you know, about racial issues, but I can't teach you how to treat someone like a human being.
Yeah, I definitely have. And sometimes I get too scared to even like talk about it, because I feel like I'm just gonna sound whiny, or they truly just won't understand. And there's always like this huge disconnect between me and staff and students.
For the most part, what I've seen in terms of issues when it comes to race is mainly microaggressions, or like comments that are made that I don't think people necessarily realize how like heavily implied, or how the context of what they're saying is not appropriate for the classroom, and it hurts other people.
My one friend who, like, we became friends because we were like, oh my god, you like K-pop? I like K-pop. You're Middle Eastern? I'm Middle Eastern. And she wears the hijab, and, like, I would hang out with her, and, like, professors would make snide comments being like, oh, y'all don't really speak English well. That's why you don't, like, get good grades and stuff like that. And it's, like, super condescending, because, like, I was born and raised in Maryland, and she was born and raised in Queens, and English was both of our first languages, so it's like...
The one that I can remember the most is in my history class. The professor made it very clear that she did not like Asians. So she would constantly compare Asians to Europeans, saying stuff like, usually Asians are very small compared to Europeans. They're very petite, very quiet compared to us robust Europeans. She would also say certain comments that I think would be directly towards me, because she would be looking at me constantly.
I don't think professors necessarily would discriminate me right away, but I've definitely had instances where professors would make assumptions that weren't true. Like, for example, for my fashion business practices class in my first semester of FIT, the professor was a very kind guy, like well-meaning and all of that. But he came up to me before one of our lessons. He said, oh, hey, we're going to be talking about Bangladesh today. like maybe you could speak to like what's going on there, and just like, oh, maybe I could get your perspective, and you can help like illuminate that to the class. And I was just like, yeah, I'm from New York, like I'm from here.
A big one with me is asking if I'm high, or if I sell or smoke weed. I don't smoke, but I keep getting asked that question by professors and students, and it kind of pisses me off sometimes. It'll be like little assignments where like you're supposed to tell about your life, and it feels like people are assuming the kind of life you live, and it's like talking to you differently, like their tone changes. Like a professor would talk to a white kid a certain way, and they wouldn't talk to me a certain way, in the sense that there's like maybe less excitement, less interest when it comes to talking to me compared to like other kids in the classroom.
I mostly became aware of the microaggressions when I studied abroad my junior year. And basically I've had like professors like touch my hair without asking, like on multiple occasions. I've been like misidentified like so many times. And after a while you just kind of like internalize it. And like one of my friends who was also a POC, she like one of her professors said the N-word in front of her. And like one of my other friends was there when this happened, and she was like, no, this isn't okay. So she like went to the director of the program and she like told her what happened and everything. And like the response she got was like, well, like this is Europe, like they don't understand that you can't do that. And like maybe you like you and your friends could like make a list of things that you shouldn't say to people. And it's just like, I mean, like I understand that it's Europe, but like at the same time this woman's an American, so it's like you yourself should know, and like you should also like tell your staff, because like it's just not right. Like it's just not fair for you to like expect your students to like have a certain like decorum with these professors if they come from another culture, but then you don't expect your professors to like treat your students with respect.
In my experiences, classes at FIT don't really talk about race at all. There's never really been much of a discussion about race, and I feel like they don't really know how to deal with it. So it's easier for them to just skip over it.
When we learn the history of film, we just kind of glazed over the deeper parts of history, and like we'd never stop to analyze it and be like, oh crap, that film that was made like ages ago was actually racist. I think as students, we talk about it after class, which is nice, because there still is like space between us to like feel open about it. But in a classroom setting, there is no space for that. There is no room for that. I think professors don't take the time of day to acknowledge that, so to speak.
For the most part, it's very Eurocentric history in terms of fashion, but I do know that at least my professor that I had, she tried her best to include other cultures, but at most what they would get is like one singular unit that doesn't span a large amount of time. It would be like maybe just this culture's fashion in the late 1900s or something. It would never be the full growth of that culture's fashion design history.
There are professors who are very open about racism and incorporating diversity and all that. But then there are professors who are very adamant about not involving anything related to politics into the classroom environment. I always thought that if I ever said anything that I myself would get in trouble. And when I think about it now, it's definitely partially because of the way I was raised. I think it's also mostly because at FIT, we never really had someone to motivate us to raise our voices.
No, I don't feel comfortable because, like, in FBM, a lot of these professors are like, yeah, I'm the head of PVH buying. So if you say something against them, you're like, oh, am I screwing over my entire career?
I think it has to be addressed that we're put in this hyper-competitive space where we're so in fear of failing that we're not going to speak up because we're like, oh, if I speak up, then that's going to take away from my grade. That's going to take away from me possibly getting an internship because that professor is not going to recommend me to people, or they're going to say that oh, I'm a problem because I'm speaking out on like injustices that are happening against me.
Since like fashion, at least like success in the fashion industry is like very like contingent upon like who you know and like the connections you make, it's definitely made me like feel like I couldn't really connect to like my professors and like the staff and whatnot. So I don't know, it's just kind of given me anxiety about like going off into the industry and like wondering if it's going to be like that there too.
Because when I had a situation or a slightly big situation that happened with me and a professor, and I came to them about it, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna look into it. We're gonna see something. We're gonna do something," and nothing ever happened. So I was like, after that, I was like, okay, so I won't go to them about anything because they say they're gonna do something. I had the same experience in high school. It's like you experience racism or something of that nature, and then they'll be like, "Oh, we're gonna have a committee. We're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna really see something about this," and then nothing happens and nothing changes.
I think we can all agree that almost every campus, if not all, has some level of racism. But when I see my own school outwardly showing such racism, it almost breaks my heart, especially if the campus is in the heart of New York City. They should have known better. And I want to know how that happened. I know that they sent emails regarding the situation, but it's still up in the air.
Seeing and learning about the industry, I wasn't like, yeah, it wasn't surprising that it did happen, but I expected better. And on top of that, I was also very concerned at the fact that I didn't hear about this when it happened, and that I heard it from an outside source and not from FIT itself.
I first heard about it on social media. It was definitely very embarrassing. It was so embarrassing, being a Black student who goes to FIT, and it was just sad how easily they dismissed her discomfort and called it, like, basically we're thinking of it as delusion. It made me realize how much the school really doesn't take POC feelings seriously. How maybe they just think it's all in our heads when it really was like offensive and it blew up into this big thing. And if they really just like listened to the Black model and open and like heard what she was saying, then none of this would have happened.
So I think the school, though, when it came to the response to that, they only did something when the press heard about it. That's what I think. Because, like, even with the Black Lives Matter stuff, they didn't say anything until there was, like, petitions for the school to stop being racist.
I definitely feel like although, like, the show is obviously, like, very problematic, I think it was good in the sense it opened a lot of, like, dialogue for this to happen. I feel like a lot of, like, why students at FIT is, like, organizing and like mobilizing now is because this happened and like students like finally like realize like this is an actual problem at our school. But like on the school side, it's definitely just a bunch of like PR stunts, at least from what I see. I've like yet to see the school like send out an email about like how they've been racist to teachers or like students and like how they fail to like fire like professors who have like done racist things consistently.
In certain ways, I think it took the right step. Those town hall meetings was, I think, very helpful. And the presence of Joyce Brown in those town hall meetings was necessary to have. But I feel that town hall meeting was a good step in the right direction, but there does need to be more action taken.
I feel like they definitely should hold more responsibility and try to hold more responsibility for themselves. And I feel like it can get quite tiring to be like a colored student or a Black student and to explain why they should, why or how they should gain responsibility. Because I feel like the POC students are always the ones having to explain things constantly. So I think it's kind of their part to figure it out and not so much always our part.
Even though the professors in the film and media program are okay, the majority of them are white men or white women. I was writing a story that was like primarily based on like my experiences in my life. Like I remember telling this professor like I'm having a really hard time writing this, and I don't know if it's because my script, half of it is in Spanish. Like I don't know what the hell is going on, but there's something that's not clicking. I'm having such a hard time writing this. And there was nothing that he could really do to clarify that for me, and or kind of be like, oh well, why don't you try this or try that. And I just think that if I spoke to someone who was maybe a Spanish speaker or someone who did have a Hispanic background, maybe they could understand and give me some like insight as to like, oh well, maybe you're feeling this way, so try that. That's kind of like the main thing that I've had to deal with, is just finding professors who could really understand what I was trying to say and like help me elevate it a bit more.
I feel like a lot of the white professors and the white students, they have a familiarity because they kind of, everyone doesn't live the same, but there'll be like little similarities within the life they live and within their families that allows them to connect on a deeper level. And most brown and black students don't have that because the professor is white. It's a super big disconnect. And that translates into teaching, especially when like a lot of the professors go into personal experiences in the industry or out of the industry. It's like, as a black and brown person, it's like, okay, that's how it worked for you, but how would it work for someone like me? Like, how would I navigate through the illustration industry, fine art industry, fashion design? Because it is different. It's similar, but it is different because of racial issues.
I've learned so much from my PLC professors because they are very up to date with the news, and you can tell that they're really passionate about the industry that they're in. And they're much more accepting of their students, whereas my boomer professors, either unintentionally or intentionally, they say certain things that upset not just me but also some of my classmates, and sometimes they don't realize it. Even if we pointed it out to them, they lash out on us sometimes and tell us that we're wrong.
The biggest issue I've seen with certain professors at FIT is empathy. Just the lack of willingness to understand a student's situation, which I mean, I think is ridiculous, because like, you're an educator, that is your job to have that empathy for your students and to understand us and create a safe and comfortable environment. So yeah, not having to have these weird, strange, awkward conversations. And even like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't challenge your students, but it's just, I feel like it wouldn't help, because then we would be challenged in a way that isn't belittling us. We'd be challenged in a way to help us grow. I think that would probably be like the biggest difference if there are more people of color as professors at FIT.
It's important to have mentors if you're not white in the industry, because they can tell you how it is, they can help you, versus like, if it's all white professors, they're going to tell you the same exact thing probably. So like, it's good to have conflicting like opinions, in this case ethnicities, because that's how you actually have change.
Join the BSU. Because whenever I've gone to the BSU, I felt so like close, and it's like we all sit together and we talk about our experiences at FIT with like microaggressions or discrimination or things that have just made us uncomfortable. In February, the Black Student Union had a Black in Time exhibition, and my art was in it, and they asked me to put more pieces in it, and they really liked it. And I felt like it was the first time that people were looking at my art and they really enjoyed it.
All right, I love BSU. I like what it's there for. But the reason why I went to BSU is because I was always early for class, and that was just a place for me to be. I kind of make an effort to reach out to everyone who's Black, especially if you're in the illustration or fine arts program. Or at least I like to try. So it's kind of helped me with that. Because like, now I feel like I know a good 80% of the Black people who go to FIT. I don't think BSU was up with that, for sure.
When I first started at FIT, I like put myself in a shell for like my first 2 semesters there because I just wasn't comfortable. But like once I started breaking out of that is when I like discovered other people who share my perspective. It's when I joined the gospel choir at FIT and was like with a bunch of really beautiful people. When I made friends with like people in BSU at FIT, and it's just learning to like break out of your bubble, which is something I keep saying, and I think it's something for everyone to needs to do, break out of your bubble no matter who you are, and like not being afraid of like joining in community and finding a community bond among others.
Even though like the professors and like the school might not be like aware about these issues, like the students definitely are, and I think that's like one of like the greatest things about this school is that like where like the school itself lacks, the students kind of like make up for it.
There's like lack of Black students, lack of Black professors, lack of Black illustrators in general that were shown. So I think it'd be much easier and much better if they showed us some illustrators that look like us, some people in our fields that look like us, because I'm a Black girl and I go to FIT where all my professors are old white men, and it's like it's so hard to see myself.
FIT should do some kind of, for lack of a better word, background test on some of the faculty they have. And I have also heard a lot of stories from some of my friends where their own mentors have constantly tried to apply to FIT to be a professor, at least an associate professor, and they never got in. But these mentors are current professionals in their industries, and they're also POCs, and they're women. So I feel like FIT first needs to take a look at their entire faculty and accept what they're lacking.
At the end of the day, because like as I said, there's an environment created where we don't feel comfortable, because it's just classically been set that our perspective is usually marginalized and like kind of shut off. So if you like, you know, if you get behind them, if you understand them, if you get behind them, if you support them, then there's more of a power for speaking up. And then also your environment's going to get better too, because if an injustice is happening to one person, that injustice is also likely to happen to you in one way or another. So I think I'm going to keep using the word empathy because that's what it is. It's understanding that the betterment for your fellow person is also the betterment for you. And I think that's for, non-POC people at FIT, definitely. And it's for just non-POC people in the world generally.
So I think like something that, you know, the school and like just people in general should do is like be accountable and like call things out like they are, not like out of spite or like bitterness, but like because you care about like making your school and your community better. I feel like at least like in this time we like love cancel culture, but we don't like accountability. So yeah, until like FIT like owns up to like its racism in like their own classrooms, like I don't think anything's gonna change. Like I like definitely feel like when it comes to the school, it's always like something that happens somewhere else. It's always like, oh, this racist incident happened somewhere else, but like they don't like ever like take a step to like look inside of their classrooms and like look at like if they're doing anything like problematic.
Make the change you want to see. Because it's not impossible, like, compared to 100 years ago. People are listening now.
If you do put in that work, you'll definitely find people who are like-minded like you, who look like you, who have similar struggles, and who also have the goal of wanting to make it.
You should make friends with as many different kinds of people at FIT as possible. It'll help in the long run in terms of understanding other people's cultures, how to go about being respectful to every kind of person that you encounter. And not necessarily so that you can succeed in the industry, but just succeed in general. Because being nice will get you a long way, I feel. Or at least I've been told by my grandma.
The situation won't change till you make the first step. Despite how people look, more often than not, people are happy that someone is willing to talk to them. Do your best to be the one to put your hand out. Just be okay reaching out. Force yourself to, because you can't complain about a situation and not do anything about it.